Sure, I'm ready.
Okay. Welcome everybody to another episode of Meet the Expert. This time I have my great friend Paul Braren, who was featured in the previous Meet the Expert at VMworld, where he told us all about his home lab equipment and all the work he does with home labs. But today we're getting to know the man, the person, the legend. Paul, introduce yourself. Tell me what your current role is, and we'll start from there.
Thanks, Ariel. So yeah, I'm Paul Braren. I'm working at VMware now as a vSAN SE, and I've been at VMware for about a year now.
Okay.
This current role, pre-sales, talking to customers about storage.
Okay. Now I know, and this is where we're probably going to spend a lot of time, is you previously spent a lot of time with IBM. But before we talk about that, tell me how you started. How did you get interested in computers in the first place?
Yeah, okay. Commodore VIC-20. So this is before the Commodore 64 that was much more popular. So there I am, a teenager. I learned to type one summer because my mom made me take typing lessons. I'm glad she did. And it was a whole lot more fun to do something with typing skills than a physical typewriter with big keystrokes and moving the platen back and forth. Much more interesting to actually type in code. It was basic programming. It was peek and poke commands from a gaming magazine where you'd type in 6 or 8 pages of data.
She sent you to typing class.
Yeah, and didn't really like that, but I did learn to type.
Somehow you managed to get your paws on one of these and bring it home?
I saved money for a Commodore VIC-20. Begged my parents to help, whatever I needed to do. My little 13-inch fuzzy screen.
You were hooked. Yeah, you wanted one of those, and then you found out the subculture of computer magazines where they brought the source code and then.
Yep. Now where I'm going with the story, you're learning what parts of it you like and what you don't. So that story ends with, well, I'm learning to type, and then the payoff is you type in 6 or 8 pages of a game, peek and poke commands and basic. You get one wrong word, the whole thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
So. But when it works, it's a cool feeling.
You get a free game. You
get to play a game, and you're on your 13-inch blurry screen. That was a TV back then. I remember buying that $169 TV. I still have that actually. And yeah, that's the Commodore VIC-20 story. But going back a little before that, let's see, there was the Atari 2600 game console with a membrane keyboard that came out a year after the Atari. So you're playing your games with joysticks, but then a year later they come out with a membrane keyboard to type in basic commands. That was pretty horrible. So I knew it was just too slow, too frustrating. I guess I like being, productive, not pushing in a membrane key and hitting it twice because you missed it and that kind of junk. So I knew I wanted something better, and that was the VIC-20. The thing I was aspiring to was a real computer with an actual touch keyboard where I could, use touch typing skills.
A discerning home and end users from day one. Yeah,
I guess so. I mean, Commodore VIC-20 was not a fancy machine and pretty affordable. The masses could finally get something. And we're talking,
Yeah, $4,000 back there.
No, not a Commodore VIC-20. No, way under 1,000. They totally blew all the price records. I think it was under 500 or 400.
Wow. Okay.
Commodore 64 was higher. So anyhow, I also remember that.
How old were you at this point?
14.
Okay.
So the miserable part of that was those many pages of typing. If power went out in your house, it's gone.
You're done.
Or if the cassette drive you were saving stuff on died, that miserable feeling of, my God, do I really want to do this again? I was 80% done in the power. I guess you could say a career, thinking about safety and protecting your data and all that. You could say it started as a 14-year-old. That miserable feeling. Well, it still happens to some customers, But so anyhow, that was my start with computers. But I also learned that, do I want to learn how to write thousands of lines of code or even exactly what I was typing in that game? I had a passing knowledge. I had an idea what was going on, but I also realized I quite enjoyed trying different computers out, different cassette players, get whatever was faster, newer, better. I love the hardware part of it, frankly, more than the coding. So I could look over someone else's code in a 100-line script or something and tweak it and make it my own eventually. But I knew I wasn't a big fan of C programming, including in college. That was not my major. So yeah, so that's how I got into computing. Teaching myself stuff.
So when you went to computing, you looked at the computer programming classes or program, and you said, this is not me.
As an undergrad, it was pretty quick. Freshman, sophomore year, C++, not my thing. Oh my gosh, wow, is this what computing is? The answer is no. I already knew there was other aspects to getting computers stood up.
So what did you end up doing, and how did you get your first IT job?
Sure, so I was lucky enough to be working as a teaching assistant at Cornell University, Ithaca, New York, quite far from major cities, but man, do they have a good internet connection. and they're very innovative.
Cornell was one of the main...
I learned this later.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of history being made. I didn't really have a clue until decades later, but Cornell really had a fast internet connection, and they had quite a backlog of help desk trouble tickets. Half the students were coming in, undergrads, with PCs. The whole help desk was geared towards the Mac. They were heavy on the Macs, and the library and all that stuff was all Mac. So they had this culture shift, this upheaval, where all of a sudden a ton of PCs were coming in. And with a 2-month backlog, and a young growing family, my first kid's born, I'm like, I gotta do something to keep things going.
Was this like Pentium PCs or?
Yeah, what did you have? Let's see, 286 was the PS2 Model 50 in the middle of colleges and undergrad, so late 80s. That was a game changer, right? You had 2.5-inch floppy drives, 1.44. The hard drive was 20 megabytes, so you're only fitting a handful of floppies in your hard drive. I would use WinZip to compress a game, unzip it into a RAM disk, play the game at good speed. This is again that theme of always trying to speed up or get the most out of my hardware, right? Not a great machine and not much disk space, so I'm like, how many games can I squeeze on it? With WinZip and writing a little script to unzip it to RAM disk, play the game, it would run wonderfully, and shut it all down. That was a little bit of scripting. 8 lines of code, but making the ownership experience a whole lot more fun.
My first game was Wolfenstein 3D on a 386.
There you go. Okay. So yeah, you're dating yourself as well. Yeah. So for me, it was only a few years. 286 was only a couple years earlier. Yeah.
So you were. All these kids were coming in with 386s or 286s, and nobody knew what to do with them. Correct.
So now we're getting to late 80s, early 90s. What did students have? They had modems, and the internet was just starting to get somewhere by like 91, 92. So I talked to the manager of the help desk. I'm like, look, I've got a problem, a trouble ticket. I've actually figured out dial-up on PCs. I think I can reduce the backlog of your help desk from 2 months to 2 weeks. That sounds very boastful and braggy, but it was more like sheer desperation. Little kid at home trying to figure out what I'm going to do to make a living. Like, what if she'll actually say yes to trying me out for free? Not even talk about salary or any of that. Just see if I can meet this thing I arbitrarily made up to reduce the help desk wait time for PC tickets, and it worked. It was all about documenting, saying here's how to do it. Here, if I document it properly, so the whole help desk team knows what to tell people when they call on the phone, we can dramatically reduce this backlog within a week. And it wasn't rocket science. It was very simple. It was just what dip switch positions you needed on your US Robotics Sportster modem. That's what we're talking about, 14.4 modems here, came 28.8. Just document it, give them a cookie cutter, and then give the students guidelines of what they buy at the bookstore, so we will get them online and we'll be successful with getting from DOS to Windows as the GUI was coming along, right? So that was the start. And it was also the start to networking. TCP/IP was glommed onto DOS. Bare access is what Cornell called it, a floppy you'd hand the student and get them online. And there was this WinSock stuff. It would give Windows, not Windows for workgroups, just Windows, a network connection. So when you fired up Windows on top of DOS, it could see the internet. And that's where it started. That's where the career started, and that's where excitement around things like NCSA's Mosaic web browser.
I was about to say Mosaic.
I saw Mosaic. So you remember, we were sitting there with developers. Cornell was run by, I think, 6 people, and some developers. I wasn't really one of them. We were doing OS2 testing. But he just says, hey guys, come over here. And we just kind of look over his desk, and there he is with Mosaic web browser showing us some military site something. But we're all like, wow. You know? And then that place was innovative. Within 2-3 weeks, they had all this card catalog and everyone at Cornell online. When I look back at the time frame we were at, we were bleeding edge. No firewalls from home. I was doing video streaming of black and white cameras from my home. 91 over a 28.8 modem. CUC-me was like Brady Bunch. You had 9 people's faces. The guy who wrote CUC-me was sitting behind me. He's like, hey, I need someone to test it on OS2. I'm like, great, OS2. That's my thing. And that's the second job I had. So I went from help desk to maybe I should get myself OS2 certified. Studying that while the baby's sleeping. Asked my wife, can I spend $700 to take a test in Atlanta, hoping I pass it as a stepping stone to a career in what's now called IT. You didn't really call it then. You called it in computers, what you told your mom, fixing stuff that's broken or installing stuff. And that worked out. That led to work with IBM. So you could say, it was like 93, I guess, getting the OS2 certification was a stepping stone to contract work at Cornell that IBM was funding, to a contract job from 95 to 97, to finally actually working for IBM 97 on for about 21 years.
That's amazing. Well, it's amazing. Well, a lot of the people that I interview, I always ask them how they started, because it always starts with like a help desk job or someone else helping
people.
You know, and little by little you grab, you latch onto things, and that you just said, hey, wife, you know, we're tight, but I'm going to make an investment.
$700
It's a big bet, but you have to trust me that this is going to be good for us, and it normally pays off in IT.
And I remember how nervous I was. Almost everyone's in their 40s. I'm in my mid-20s with a kid. So I'm looking around at the people that are taking the test. They went to a class for it.
Yeah,
I did not, and IBM didn't require it. Because all it was the airfare and self-study while the baby's sleeping at night, night after night, finally feeling ready enough to take it.
And that's the beauty
of
IT.
And that self-made aspect of all the IT people. You meet so many people from different undergrad degrees that have nothing to do with IT, right? That just kind of made it. I'm another one of those stories where I had no idea if I had the ability, because I wasn't a programmer. I admitted that to myself. Like, yeah, I can hack other people's code, but I don't like 10,000 lines of code. I can handle 100.
Are fearful of that thing.
Yeah.
When in reality,
so much of my career was hands-on stuff, racking and stacking, updating firmware, automating that, getting an operating system on there, getting the RAID controller working. Those stories there, and passing that test with a bunch of people that tended to have gray hair, and I actually barely passed the test.
Probably they were mainframe operators that are being retaught the skill.
And then there's me, the twerp. It felt really good to know, okay, maybe I have an ability to make it in this career I've chosen, which is...
All right, so what was the next big jump for you? Like, okay, you got your OS2 cert, you're getting all this work. What was the next thing that you had to take a big leap of faith?
Well, the next thing is, how do you get a salary so you can actually get a mortgage in a house with a growing family, or plans to grow the family with one baby? And we move in with in-laws, move back to Connecticut where I grew up, and figure out what can I do with the OS2 engineer thing. Little company was growing from 12 people all over the United States. We're flying into Utah for training on OS2. Like, here's how you can train resellers on OS2. In other words, talk for a living. I'm like, really? Just explain people how OS2 works, what's the benefits, why is it more stable than Windows at the time and all that. That sounds reasonable. The reality was pretty much everyone's in their 20s. We're all desperate to make a living. I'd be driving to Buffalo, New York for a 9 a.m. meeting at a large distributor in Buffalo, a 9 a.m. meeting where I'm presenting in front of 40 people. There was no money for flying. It was basically kind of like almost hazing-like. Like, if you guys can pull this off, this little company of 12 people, and just, it's going to be grueling the first 2 months, travel heavy, we might not be able to fly everywhere, but if you can get in your car and drive and meet a great number of customers and meet our objectives, you'll be growing to 180 people. And that's exactly what happened. So that was my test to see, did my OS2 certification mean something in the real world? And it got me that job to be a part of the first 12 people actually hired, and getting up at 3 in the morning to drive to Buffalo
and dealing with whatever came up, right?
Correct.
Any questions that came up.
Correct. From a bunch of people, frankly, a lot older than me.
You didn't have a phone at the time to research stuff.
No, you had a cell phone for safety on those long drives. That's about it, with the flip phone and the pull-out antennas. I actually did a podcast recently where we whipped a lot of that stuff out of our little home museum that my older son has an interest in, where you're showing off, 90s tech and what it looked like with an analog phone with a speaker and all. It reminded me of those long drives across upstate New York, and thinking their phone was a safety device. It wasn't an internet research device, right, until the 2000s. So that job, same thing, small hard drives.
But
now they're
whoever taught you to deal with crowds and do any teaching? Was it just from your own experience and your own, I can do this, I'll do it?
Publicly speaking, I was super let's see. Not comfortable at all, dry mouth, the whole thing, all the way until mid-30s. I didn't really get used to it until doing it so many dozens of times. You start to learn to just deal with the nerves, and it's not going to do you any good to dwell on that. And you hear that story too. But so standing in front of a bunch of people at Ingram Micro, you're young, but all that mattered was you needed to know a little more about OS2 and installing it. I had installed it for years already, probably 100 times in my home lab, machines at home that I bought and assembled myself. So you realize you just need to know a little bit more than the audience to be able to handle moderate to pretty easy questions. And then just do that over and over, and then you get some joy as you get better at it. It got tougher. They're like, oh, DB2. IBM makes DB2 databases. Let's put that on the same laptop. Not a really official IBM laptop, a Sager laptop, third party, that you had to hope OS2 was going to work on with drivers. So that begins, oh, We just grew to 180 people. Paul's going to be the support guy and make sure Stacker disk compression works and doesn't corrupt databases.
Whoa.
So you have a small laptop hard drive, it's slow, you want to load it. It was the same stuff I was doing with the machines at home, where you're on a shoestring budget, very little hard drive space, you use a WinZip. Well, Stacker was basically that. Compression for OS2. What could go wrong? Well, sometimes file systems could go wrong on a laptop. You didn't gracefully shut down or all that. So that challenge of, this is not like rocket science, it's more about the difficult part is, how do you scale to 180 people? You got to write some really clean documentation so everyone knows exactly how to survive with this laptop, this version of OS2, and this version of database and compression software. Three things we're now marketing that are just in the computer industry. They happen all around the same laptop, and you're now ready to bounce from one customer to another, talking about completely different stuff. DB2 at one place, disk compression at another, OS2 itself at a third. And I stuck with that for let's see, about a year, I think it was.
That was a stressful job.
Yeah, driving all over the place, and then we started flying a bit, but mostly driving.
When
streets and trips.
I got to think that job you left, because I think that they were pushing you and pushing you and pushing you.
It was also, I was young, in my 20s, and for me, it's actually an adventure it's strange to say this, but I need to get to New Jersey at 10 a.m. per customer. I got Streets and Trips, Street Atlas, a serial cable, and a GPS. I'm not going to get lost there.
There's no phone to help you.
You miss an exit in the middle of New Jersey, you could blow 40 minutes if it's rush hour because you missed your exit, and you got to loop around it. You can't mess it up. So I'd look at it like a task. I'd have printouts of that trip. I know what exit number, and then you get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, you're going to drive, and you show up, and you make darn sure you're not going to be late for that 10 a.m. meeting when people are waiting for you to present. I guess that it's just a challenge. I like to ride to nerd challenges. That sounds grueling. It is a bit, but especially as you get old, but I also loved it, right? And it did turn into a surprise phone call. I'm talking to a customer, potential customer, about OS2. Hey, you can do an OS2 training. It's like, oh, my wife actually works for IBM. And actually, excuse me, sorry, I'm talking to the wife. Husband works at IBM, whatever. I got invited to a team of 6 IBMers in IBM Waltham, 404 Wyman Street. Can you train them on OS2? I'm like, well, I'm just like a contractor. I'm not an IBMer, but I do know OS2. Sure, I can train IBMers on OS2 that are new to it. Let's do this. And within an hour of talking to that group of people, they're admittedly in their 40s, well into their career. They're used to green screens and no character turn. You're typing an email, you hit enter at the end to get to the next line on a green screen. Just moving into Lotus Notes and a GUI and all that. And OS2 was big, but Windows 95 was going away, and Windows NT was replacing it. So now we're at like 94, 95. And the manager's offering me a job, like the very first day she met me. Got a little tricky, because you're now at a company, and competition, contract signed, all that stuff. But it eventually worked out where I became, moving from a contractor for 2 years, 95 to 97, became a full-time IBMer just before pensions and other stuff went away. So it worked out okay. So I'm very thankful to IBM for 21 years of it. Quite a ride. I then got to go to Australia and London. I saw the world after having kids. Got married early, had kids, then got to see the world thanks to IBM. And the adventures just continued. So that's the beginning of my story. It was scary as all heck.
It's fun because we're barely touching IBM at this point.
No, it just...
But there's a lot of...
That's what led up to it. It's the same theme here. A lot of people like to teach themselves and read. That's the thing in common. You're teaching yourself stuff your whole career. That never ends, right? If you enjoy that, cool. If you're looking for a career where it's a cushy ride and you get to do the same thing for decades.
No, it's not for you,
No, everyone knows.
It's going to be tough. All right. 25 years? 21
21 years, but total.
And I know you did about everything. You told me you traveled. I know you did. You told me once a story where you had to know the commands in your head because where you were going was an airtight environment.
Sure.
So you've been through all of the stuff.
Blast doors underground, no internet. So you're not kidding on the airtight, like
if you don't remember something, it's not going to work.
You're walking in with whatever's between your ears, and you have to be able to spout whatever knowledge comes right off the top of your head. There's no internet research, no phones. Turns out all they wanted to know was about ghost cloning. Like, I've been cloning machines since '95, back on Token Ring and IBM. This I can handle, and I'd already been doing that for a decade. So I was like, okay, I'm in an underground bunker. It's intimidating as all heck with no internet, but I got the knowledge of what they need, and it's fine.
Tell me about the big shifts in your IBM career. Like, you started with OS, but when did you have to retool, like to Windows NT, I guess, or what did you have to do?
Oh, sure. I love doing it. This is fun. So you hear 21 years sounds maybe boring? No, I dramatically changed jobs within and had different managers and completely different roles within IBM during that time. So that first one, 95 to 97 contract, and then become an employee. I now become the guy to roll out laptops. We didn't have standard builds. So you got Lotus Notes, you got your Windows, like, Windows 95 is buggy, it's crashing when people print. I'm beta testing, like, this is not going to fly to replace OS 2. We're going to go with Windows NT, stable. People need to get their work done, they need Lotus Notes email running, they need to be able to print, sometimes actually print to a fax device, whatever. That stuff had to be solid. And I'd be the nerd hired for internal infrastructure where I took great pride in that role.
Yeah.
You could call it help desk. Why that's an entry-level job, I still didn't figure it out. I kept the pace humming as we grew from 6 people to 24. I was very proud of that scaling, right? That doing that, helping scale.
And the fact that in that time, when everybody had driver issues,
IRQs and all that stuff, So it's like, okay, the way we're going to solve that, we're going to all buy 17 laptops. We grew from 6 to 17, and then another year later to 24. So then those hops, like, we got to buy 17 laptops, propose to the manager how much it's going to cost, and here's the build that's going to go on it. I'm going to clone it. Each one's going to work exactly the same. If one is a bug, all 17 are going to have a bug, but we're not going to have 17 different bugs on laptops built with different versions of Windows or Windows NT. So moving from OS 2 to NT, pretty manual thing. Lotus Notes ran on both. It was a little tricky, but it was moving NSF files and got it all going. Taking pride in, like, plugging all the power strips in, getting a conference room, getting it done as quickly as possible, that became kind of my thing, realizing there's other interns we can hire from, we had interns from local universities, which is great to train them. I need to figure out how to do it faster, basically. That's the challenge in it. What I'm doing is sort of kind of repetitive and mundane, but how can I automate or make it faster? And that was fun, just helping people roll out a new laptop that was shiny and new and a different operating system, but it looked similar to what they were used to, and they were effective on it. They just moved from green screen in 95, 3270 green screen terminal emulation, to Lotus Notes in 95. Then here they are in like 98, moving from OS 2 GUI that they just had 3 years on, and they're used to a GUI now, moving that to Windows NT. It's like, oh, Lotus Notes looks the same, I'm fine with it. So that's that kind of mentality. Those jobs became bigger. It became scaling to, how do you do 1,000 blades? That's what rolled into the late 90s into 2000s. So you asked about shifts. So that was a good run, but after a decade, so that was the longest spot in IBM. Customers coming to us, developers, looking for someone who could stand up Linux or Windows NT or whatever they needed, times 40 servers. Get that ready for Monday, I'm going to bang away at this. Plus help us run the classroom. It's all about cloning and a little bit of VMware, GSX, tall servers, installing VMware. You put the network driver off of floppy. So I got to learn VMware really early, even before vMotion, workstation products and all that, and then seeing vMotion there's a common thread there. Since the mid-2000s, definitely hooked on VMware for a long time. That became a moment for my career where, as that job was like, okay, I've been here a decade, this is maybe too comfortable. I had that conversation with my wife. We got 2 elementary and middle school kids. It's not a great time to do consulting, but I need to get in front of customers. Not friendly customers who are at IBM's playground for free, kicking the tires in their hardware for a week or 2, optimizing their software. That was fun, but it became repetitive and kind of easy. It's like, I should probably go to banks in Manhattan where they're tough and swear a lot, or out in the boonies at a military site.
You probably felt the need for a more intellectualized challenge and more real world problems.
Correct, to be in front of customers. So I did that for 5-6 years. Yes, it was travel heavy, but got to see the world. At the 10-year job, I did get to Australia and London to do a cookie cutter solution for remote access that I succeeded with them well. We grew to 30 centers worldwide, and I got to firsthand deploy it and help hire people in both London and Sydney. It was fantastic, right? So I got a taste of what travel could be like when you fly home and feel good about what you just pulled off. So I'm like, okay, I'll try consulting. Thought about moving to Raleigh, ended up just working from home and flying around. I've always worked from home, by the way, at least a day or 2 a week since in my 20s. So for decades, I've always worked from home, so being self-motivated to handle that. So got to see 35 of the 50 states doing consulting and secret clearance work, all kinds of places. Lots of common threads would develop. But like you said, some with military where it's, wow, it's really weird, you can't even touch the keyboard. You're just telling people stuff to help them be more effective at their job. And the common thread would be you're training up to 10 people on getting started with their new servers, their new operating system like VMware, which they were unfamiliar with in 2005, 2006. And the theme would be there's almost always 1 or 2 people that all the other IT people in the room would look to for an answer. Whether the projector just broke, who's going to figure out the resolution, fixing it for this guy Paul who's visiting, or quickly get another projector. or the server room, the EMC Clarion storage, they're trying to see, and ESXi is trying to look for, and we have it all zoned right. So can someone who in here can troubleshoot this quickly, because Paul's only here for a week, we got to get this stood up. It was almost always that like superstar would emerge. It was usually a team leader, someone a little more senior in the room. That same person is who would be talking to me at lunch break about all kinds of stuff we did in our home labs.
Yeah.
That nerding, where it extended well beyond your day job, you were into this.
Yeah.
Period. And not just your day job 9 to 5. That person who was really passionate and cared about it tended to be the team leader, and that's who I would kind of bond with and gel with, and you form a relationship with.
That's exactly how they know so much, because you know they're doing this for fun.
And so yeah, that's the theme there. And then, so that job, yeah, you learn a lot by putting yourself reading PDFs. Like you get a call on a Friday, literally, can you get to Mississippi Monday to start teaching by noon? You're looking at flights and whatever, and within half an hour you're writing a statement of work and booking your flights.
Whoa.
And you're on the plane Monday morning. And I had little kids, and my wife's working as a nurse. I'm literally reading a PDF from that 6 a.m. flight in the air, trying to figure out, hopefully I know a little more than the customer does when I land on the ground and get there by noon. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But you start to realize, you know, if you can actually pull that nerd challenge off, those things, and you kind of thrive on that stress, frankly, yeah, cool. But it's tough with these, like, 60, 70-hour weeks sometimes. Sometimes a 6 or 8 hour phone call. You get to your hotel at 6 p.m., and now you're on the phone with the customer all the way to 2 a.m. trying to finish what you were doing during the day to pull it off no matter what, because you're only there for a week sometimes.
I have to think that coming back, for example, your wife is like, you're finally home.
But you're exhausted.
You're exhausted, or you still have to finish something, and you know, it must have been stressful for a while.
Yeah, but I'm a hyper guy, but I also thrive off of that. I'm more effective and productive if I feel good about what I just accomplished at work. And now I'm at home, and the cool thing about that job is you're working with one customer at a time. When you get home at Friday at 5, the phone's not ringing, you're not on call. You're now raising your kids and with the family and catching up on the home front. And while my wife's off working, even in the week, we tag teamed it, right?
Yeah.
So that's my stories there. And actually working at home, usually I try to get home on a Thursday. Usually Friday I'm trying to work at home. I just worked a 60, 70-hour week in 4 work days, business days. And sometimes I'd be kind of off Friday or doing family stuff or going to doctors or whatever. So whatever works in each family.
So
that's my story.
So you said something very important, tag teaming with your wife also.
Very much a partnership.
I know very well how difficult the medical schedules can align, but they also understand us because of the same thing, right? So
correct, being on call on holidays. She's missing every other Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Exactly.
Nursing career is tough. But we're also able to tag team, and she could work weekends where we could raise the kids together without third parties doing it as much as possible. Those challenges, that I'm very thankful to this career that gave me that latitude. Other people in my family like, really? You get to work from home like ever? So the next job after all the consulting's travel heavy and was getting worrisome. Kids are now middle school, high school, you're looking at colleges, teaching them to drive. Knew I needed to be home. The right thing to do was, let's take the big risk of working from home. The risk there is perhaps career stagnation. You're going to be support role. Your phone could ring day or night. You better have phones all over the house that better ring reliably. If your cell phone doesn't work in the basement, you better have a ringer down there. Had all that worked out. I've been working for over 2 decades already. First guy in my town with ISDN home internet. I always had the fastest. I knew all that. Have infrastructure at home with battery backup. Work in thunderstorms.
Nerd challenge being the guy that would
running a little IT at home to make it effective, so I'm not irritating people because they're losing phone calls and stuff with me. So that was another conversation with my wife. Geez, what do you think? Work from home. This is going to be different. There's going to be some drawbacks to this job. Some weeks could be grueling. And yeah, the catch to a job working home, you hear this many times, is you got social isolation and stuff. And I got to finally, though, not flying around, I could drive to user groups and meet people like you. I'm driving to Gillette Stadium in the middle of winter to go to this VTUG we're sitting at right now, because I knew I needed to do that. All these 14, 15 years at IBM, I didn't know anybody in Connecticut or Massachusetts where I lived. So that was a problem, meaning I don't have friends in the industry that live near me. They're all over the country. And that felt good. Finally working home, helping out more at Cub Scouts. I have a more stable schedule. Actually, by then, Cub Scouts are too old for that. It's more like looking at colleges with the kids and teaching them to drive.
This time when you started blogging?
Yeah.
When you
finally
said, I'm home, I can actually do stuff, I want to share some of the...
That's when blogging began. I had tips inside of IBM. The servers were taken down. I had spent hundreds of hours of my IBM life to have them go away in an instant, when after 8 years servers come and go, and it wasn't really a shocker they had to take it down at some point. But it still planted the seed in my head, like, next time I write stuff, like solutions, I want to help everyone in the world, not just IBM, right? That's what I did 6.5 years ago. tinker try. So a lot of that's notes to yourself. You figure something out. You're not sure you're going to remember it a year or two from now. I used to write that in my computer. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write it in a blog form instead, so I can help others, not just myself.
Maybe it helps someone else.
And maybe it doesn't, and some of them were real turkeys, and you look at Google Analytics 8 months after writing it and realize only 68 people read that article you spent an entire Saturday on. Hard to justify to your wife. Those first 3 years were really tough.
This is interesting because
the growth was terrible for 3 years. It was awful.
I know of no bloggers, at least in the V community, that come back to their wife and say, but look, my article had 5,000 views. This is pretty cool.
I had to be honest. So there's a theme here. My wife supporting and being honest with all this stuff, raising the kids and these balances. So I took that job at home. It did work out well. There were 10 to 30-hour straight phone calls when a box goes down. That was my role, post-sales, enterprise support. When someone spends $500,000 on a storage array, and maybe they bought 10 or 20 of them, and they're an insurance company, when things go down, they're going to call everybody. They're going to call VMware, Cisco, HP, who made them, and then IBM for the storage array. And you don't even know who to blame. So I'd be the one on the phone. So that job, it was cool. Learned a lot about root cause analysis, how to make it never happen again for this customer and the rest of the world. And learning a lot about the process of that, and just kind of growing up to have a little thicker skin, to not be so emotional. Stuff's going to break. People are going to get emotionally pretty heated. In the end, you're their friend, when 90% of the time it wasn't even the storage array, by the way, but also that you were doing all you could to get them back in their feet as quickly as possible. And then after a week or two of review with all the other companies, you delivered a spiffy document that said, here's the root cause analysis, almost like an airline plane crashes. You got to figure out what happens so it never happens. Same thing in the storage industry. Reducing risk. So that led to that home career was now storage. It wasn't servers anymore. IBM sold off to Lenovo, the x86 servers and blade centers I spent my career on. It was now supporting storage, which was still x86 servers. I'm like, oh, this isn't really that different. Finally got that, eating dinner with my family all 5 days of the week. That was new to me. The travel actually became less and less in that job. So then kids were off to college, and then I started thinking about, okay, maybe it's time to actually look at different companies, including VMware being one of them. And knowing the manager, that was a really comfortable feeling for me. Knowing the person you're actually going to report to. Well, I met that person before he was a manager at a user group. What do you think? Of course. That's all it got. That's the common theme.
But here's something that you hadn't mentioned before. Did you ever had to manage people? Or were you not?
Team lead. I was a worldwide team lead in the 90s as a 29-year-old. Back then, team lead actually literally just meant more work, not necessarily more salary, right? Because it was a promotion that looked cool in your email footer.
You look good, but it's not really a big ass.
It means at 10 p.m. you're talking to China, leading a phone call, as well as 10 a.m. in Australia. Awesome. And don't get me wrong. And it was a stepping stone to team lead actually being a promotion one day, where IBM promoted me out of season, out of band. It was a complete surprise when a manager walks in with a smile and just had the news like, you're getting promoted today. I wasn't seeing that. I thought that happens in May, and there it was in October. Those little moments in my career are super thankful for. Again.
So I see some patterns. First of all, you've been super diligent at your job. You love your job, and you've been super good at it. You've been really trying hard to do a good job, right? I think that's the one thing that I can see as your career has progressed that has helped you a lot, because you're clearly someone that I want on my team, right? But what other tips do you have for people that are starting out, just like they started in help desk? We're very clear about, you have to be the guy that wants to help. You have to be good at what you're doing. You have to be prepared. You have to be on time. All these little things that really make a difference from good to great, right?
Okay.
So what other things do you think have helped your career and try to give to some people?
Honesty, transparency with peers and managers. So, for instance, I've had people say, you really need to say yes to everything. Like, that's not sustainable. I'm one human. There's only so many hours in the day. I need to be set up to succeed in the environment I'm in. That can mean financial funding. I need $100,000 for this project. Then I can do Australia and Sydney and London. Without it, I can't. I need this amount of hardware to prototype and test to make sure it works and to do it. Same thing with technical honesty with peers. So-and-so project, someone's asking me to be on the committee or team. If I'm not comfortable that I can pull it off, I might have to say no. That doesn't always go over well. I can look like hard-nosed, rigid to coworkers and so forth. But if I'm one of the people you said yes to, I want to be the person that people can trust. I wasn't kidding. I'm going to deliver it, whether that means it's going to take me 30 hours next week or 60. burning the midnight oil, whatever it takes to deliver what I just told that person I'm going to pull off. Like, we're going to do so-and-so class with double byte character set OS2 and Chinese. Can you do it next Thursday? When I say yes to that, and 40 students show up, there's no maybe. So the whole career of the theme's been there to say no a lot, actually. It doesn't appear that way maybe on a public blog post, because there's 80 articles in the draft folder that'll never see the light of day. They just got tossed. The story ended up negatively. The software was junk. I never finished the article. It wasn't important enough. All sorts of no's. The only things that see the light of day that I feel reasonably proud of, that there might be some benefit to bothering to post. So that's true, like internally, and true, I guess, as far as words of wisdom. Don't be afraid to say no. You do need a manager that supports you on that sometimes, because that will get you in scrapes sometimes. Frankly, from a marketing perspective, every company wants you to say yes to everything. As the IT person responsible for actually delivering that solution, you cannot possibly do that. Everyone has their limitations.
Well, and that's something that I was going to talk to you in your new role as a system engineer in VMware, which is a pre-sale role.
Very different from me. I'm the new guy completely. But
also you're very, very much aware that we can talk the solution over with the customer, and we can actually say, yeah, we think this is what would really work. But do you miss being also the guy that implements it and supports it and sees it go along?
I do, but I also don't miss being on call evenings and weekends. Just being real honest there, right? That wore on me more than I knew it was doing. So working from home, the catch was I was on call 24/7 for 6-7 years. That has an effect on a person, knowing any holiday and so forth. So
you're never too far from home.
Correct.
Always a laptop in the car.
So yes, plenty of time for hands-on. If you were in a web meeting, you had some large company showing you their desktop, showing you vSphere, and you might be actually helping them fix it. That's post-sales. It's also high stakes and high risk. Pre-sales is largely not that. You're showing a little bit of evangelism, but you're also trying to do some live demos. Live demos are my thing on my blog, right? I almost always try to have an article with a video showing you me actually doing it in the lab, not just talking about it. So we try to spice it up with live demos, but frankly, moving to a new infrastructure, I'll use the word IBM Blade Center. Hey, let's do a centralized storage array and a bunch of dense blades. This is now the complete opposite. Say, oh, let's make the servers a little taller to you, and stick drives back into it entitled to get 10 gig, and throw out all the fiber channel stuff. It's a different way of doing things. It leads to a whole lot of phone calls about, you do want to go to VCSA appliance for these reasons. Photon OS, it's lightweight, it's better than SUSE that we had on 6.0. All those little side conversations. And for me, that's a total joy.
Which as a customer, I enjoyed that a lot.
And me too, talking about it. It actually doesn't have much to do with vSAN directly, but the stepping stone to getting ready for 6.5 and getting ready for vSAN is to get to VCSA appliance, please, because it's going to help you firmware flash, automate updating your servers that you have that happen to have HBAs, drive controllers, drive firmware, a BIOS, all that stuff. Spectre and meltdown mitigation, this is high in people's mind. Firmware, you heard me say that word many times. True pretty much for decades now in my career, is that so many people get so many help desk tickets open from lack of good documentation for them to know how to succeed. And a lot of it boils down to a process of how do you actually update the firmware in an automated, quick way. So strangely, yes, I do miss the hands-on time, but I still do it in my home lab, as you see, and I blog about it to keep myself, in tune to that.
Now, there's something I really want to touch on.
But it's worth it, is my point. It's been good. I
gotta say, you gotta be having the blast of your life talking.
All right. Sorry about that. Honestly, my battery ran out. But I was able to get Paul again, and after he said, Ariel, I'm never doing anything with you again. And I convinced him to come back and basically just finish a little part here. I think the part that we left off was as you joined VMware as an SE and how much you're enjoying it. And then we actually started talking about your blog. And I was complimenting you because you've done such a great job on your blog. I think it was 6 years that you have had the blog now. And I noticed that you really keep that blog well kept. You respond to every comment that people put in there. It's an amazing blog. It's an amazing collection of information you put there. And you were telling me about how cool it is, or the time that you put into and the thought that you put into each blog post. And you were telling me a bit about that, your time investment, your personal investment in each article. So if you can recap that.
Yeah, no, sure. Well, one thing I mentioned is just like only 1 in 2,000 people that read an article tend to take the time to leave a comment.
Yeah.
So you'd ask me, hey Paul, what's a good way for people to reach out to you? Yeah, going to tinkertry.com and leaving a comment right there under an article that makes sense to ask me whatever you're going to ask me is helpful. So I can, rather than email, I can answer you in front of everybody. Because again, if you have a question, it's highly likely many other people might have the same question, and you're just the one that's a little less shy and actually took the time to type it up. So that's just one comment I made about that. But the articles tend to be long. They're not for everyone. I tend to own the product for a week or a month or sometimes a year when I write, which is very much the opposite of all the others where something comes out at CES, you see the same monitor and you see the press release and you see 5 different RSS feeds and you just, okay. But I try to talk about what owning the product like, whether it's software or hardware.
We talked about a little how a lot of people, they get something shipped to them for free, they review it and then they move on. You're not doing that.
Yeah, most of it's bought with
your own
LLC money. Basically my own money. Yep. Luckily, the advertisers and people actually visiting the site are what makes it happen. So obviously, I'm incredibly grateful that people actually read the stuff. And I also mentioned the first 3 years were so lean, and if someone's looking to bail, if you really enjoy doing it, but you're disheartened by the numbers, it takes years for Google to trust you in Google searches, really. So you start to have an article or two where it's in the top 5 Google search results. Things start to change where even your old articles just get found more. So you'll see growth in your site just by sticking at it long enough is my point. It's not right. It's just.
And we talked about that you actually create quality content. You don't create just a blog post to put something out. You normally go deep into, okay, I'm testing this, I'm liking this.
Yeah, no, along those lines too. Whether it's email, you're trying to get 30 people you're sending the email to, you want people to read it, or it's a blog post, it ultimately comes down to they want to get home to their families and have dinner quicker or more efficiently or feel smarter or better at their job. If you're adding value to their day job or their lives, now maybe they'll actually read your email or your blog post. That's how I try to think of what I'm writing. Hopefully I'm helping because I'm just figuring something else myself. I'm writing notes for myself and then sharing it with the world because it worked out pretty well and I could see that it might be benefit to others, something I believe in. So for me that's so much fun when you find something you really like or really enjoyed using and it made things better, the way you run your home lab or the way you do things at your day job. You kind of can't wait to get to the keyboard and write it. It's like in your head and it's there all weekend and finally you have a night where you're working on it. That feels good.
Yeah.
I also mentioned too, I'm terrible at things like Slack or real time. I'll often just have a heads down mode of 4 or 5 hours straight. I'm working in some sort of zone writing. I'm not chatting or replying to tweets or anything. That's how I am. Not everyone's like that. You're much better and much more responsive on all kinds of social media all the time for years, any hour. You're amazing that way. That's not me. But
my interactions tend to be shorter. Like when I visit a customer, it's 2 hours at most. So I get those little breaks. My interactions tend to be short. I don't need to like sit through and get something done 4 hours focused.
Yeah, so
that helps a lot.
Although you did pull off kudos to the tool where you inventory people's environment.
Well, that's all my friend Edgar. I gave him the idea. We used to be co-workers.
Well, it's awesome.
It is awesome.
I've used it for vSAN work, by the way, with customers.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. I mean,
and other people have contributed. So Edgar started it, but Graham Barker reached out from the UK and he said, "Hey, I made a version of this for vSAN. You guys want it?" And we put it in. So it's all been community based and it's open source. It's in GitHub.
What's the name of the tool?
It's vDocumentation. Thank you, Nick. And
this is about a voice behind the camera.
Yes, yeah, we have God. God is speaking behind the camera.
Now you have blog posts about it or GitHub. How should people search for that?
People should search through it through GitHub because it goes with all the details of how to install it. But Edgar does the blog post. So I told him, listen, you're doing all the work. I'm just helping you like think about stuff. But he's doing most of the work. Edgar Sanchez, who was my co-presenter at VMworld.
I wish I got to see that. I missed it.
Yeah, I'll send you a video. It's really cool.
No, that was really cool though to see that. You had a good idea. You contributed to the community, and that's ultimately, blog posts are helping people, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. Yeah. And my day job is helping people.
Yeah. And we were talking. I don't know if that made the previous part, but we were talking about how cool it is for you to be talking about vSAN, which is infinite hardware possibilities, right? You have all these vendors that can do vSAN solutions, and you're talking about SSDs, and you're talking about firmware and hard drives and all these things, which are really cool for us nerds, especially because we deal with this in the home lab about which SSD should I pick, and it becomes a different matter when you're talking enterprise, but it's the same geeking out mentality about specs and this and where and
there and everything.
So 6.5 years ago when I started blogging, one of the first articles was about mega RAID software for LSI RAID controllers. But guess what? Guess who's the OEM partner for HP and Dell and IBM and Lenovo now? It's all LSI chips, RAID. The vSAN job, you're taking those smarts, you're just doing JBOD mode, pass the disk through, and get a stable environment, put a 10 gig switch between, put a wall flash, and I have a really fast vSAN. It's simplified. It gets rid of, a lot of my career was about fiber channel and all that stuff and deploying that. It's a shift in thinking, and that's been fun for me because, as you know, I'll carry props. I'll carry N.2 gum sticks, the gum stick form factor. Or when I went to Buffalo User Group, how many people have heard of NVMe? Only about a quarter of the hands in the room even go up. But it's been out for 3-4 years. I've been booting from NVMe, and I blog about it. I love the bleeding edge stuff because I know it's coming. And then this time around, it's actually made it really fast for home labs that blows the doors off of the stuff you have working at work that costs millions sometimes. So it's been a fun couple of years with the arrival of much faster storage and faster little motherboards that are becoming more affordable also.
And much better.
So I'm having a blast with it.
You know, one thing we didn't talk about before, we didn't talk about how the home lab server, especially the Supermicros that you have been so good at publishing and informing people about, have changed the home lab game. Because it used to be like we only could run desktops. Now we can run certified hardware in our home labs for not a lot of money.
Yeah, fully supported. You could open a VMware trouble ticket on. So if you have eval experience, you got $180, gets you licenses of pretty much everything you'd be running from VMware that you'd want in your home lab. vSAN, vRealize, Login, so all kinds of products. VMware has a huge portfolio of software, right? So $180 investing in your IT career for the software, coupled with hardware that you can actually open a trouble ticket on if something goes wrong. That is a nice combo because you're risking your own money generally, $2 or $3 grand of your own money, not your employer, to buy this home lab stuff. And standing behind that's pretty important to make sure it keeps working. And there's been some challenges, admittedly.
The link for that is tinkertry.com/superservers, right?
Correct. There's a bunch of stuff about the information there.
That's pretty good.
The launch point. The industry has grown around lots of small compact machines that can run with relatively low fan noise and watts, like under 60 watts, under 50 watts, leave it running. That's a huge step forward. Core i7 gamer machines.
High factor.
Yep. And then finally 32 gig was kind of the boundary for the Intel NUC. It's nice to now be able to go to 128 gig of RAM, right? So yes, great for home labs, but also IT pros that are trying stuff that they don't have the luxury of being able to tinker with back at their day jobs. That's the fun part. You can do a whole lot with 128 gig of RAM. You can run a lot of VMs, including nested ESXi and so forth. So
and
it's been fun.
And this X, for example, is one of those things that as soon as it came
out, needs more memory.
Everybody is like, ooh, I don't think I have enough memory for this.
Exactly.
So. All right, Paul, please tell everyone where to find you.
So Twitter is my name, @Paul Braren, Paul Braren, B-R-A-R-E-N, which trips people up. You know that about Twitter with your name.
Kind of more difficult mine, don't worry.
And then, there's a YouTube channel, but easiest to find that just clicking on videos at tinkertry.com. And there is a contact form, email, but again, vastly prefer if people could just leave a comment right there in the public website where everyone can see it right in the homepage, the front page. The commenters generally pretty gracious and nice. So that's the best way to reach out to me. Tweets too. I'm just less I don't respond to tweets quite as often. And Twitter DM gets pretty unwieldy and tough. I don't know everyone in the world, and I can't keep up with it.
All right. So thank you so much, and I'm really sorry about what happened to the previous, ending. But I really appreciate that you came back and you allowed me to record
better.
You like this?
Whatever
better?
Got lost, I think we did all right.
You like this better? Because you like it better because I was showering all the praise on you, and you were like, oh, stop.
Ego boost. No.
Well, thank you so much
for this chance.